Hello, everyone, and welcome again. I am Success Oyeshala, and I am the host for today's virtual panel session. Today, we're bringing together a diverse group of experts, advocates, and young leaders to explore how sharing knowledge, opening opportunities, and providing support can create fairer access for women and also the underrepresented groups in AI and technology. So we have a fantastic mix of panelists today, ranging from aspiring young professionals to global level executives. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation today. Now, before we get started, just a quick note. I see the comments coming in and I can see that you guys are already active. It's amazing. Please do keep your comments coming and ensure that you remain thoughtful and respectful in the comment section. We'll also have a Q&A segment towards the end of this session. So please drop your questions into the Q&A box. This helps us to keep track of all your questions and ensure that none of them gets lost in the chat. I see that we have people from around the world, literally. So if you're their name, otherwise we'll direct the questions based on the flow of the conversation. All right, so without any further ado, let me introduce you to our incredible panel. First, we have Joanne Moore. She's the Global Early Career Director at Sage with extensive experience in developing talent pipelines and creating opportunities for the next generation. We also have Pamela Robinson, a global speaker and leadership facilitator at Fusion Force LLC. She's known for helping individuals build confidence and communicate with clarity. Third person on the panel today, we have Sharon Kichelan. She's a senior data engineer. She's also one of the local ambassadors in this year's campaign, and she's very passionate about empowering young people and women in tech. And then, like I said, who is a Teens in AI alumna. She joined in 2020 during the COVID campaign, and now she's a data scientist and a master's student at London School of Economics, connecting emerging technology to real world impact. And finally, we have Murewa Fashiro, an IT specialist and an aspiring cybersecurity professional with a strong passion for growth and innovation. Now, it's truly amazing to have all our panelists here today. And I'm sure you're going to have a very wonderful time. Hello. Hello, Joanne. Hello, Pamela. Hello, Blessing, Murwa, and Sharon. So good to have you on the session today. And now we're going to dive right into the conversation because we just have an hour to get the session done, and I'm so excited. Now, I'm going to start off with the first question. And then this is because when we think about the theme Give to Gain, which is our major conversation focus today, it makes us understand that we are not just in that space whereby we are recipients or we're just being passive about what the realities are, but it pushes us to an active responsibility, to that mindset that we can actually influence what happens. We can actually drive innovation within our space and beyond. So I'll start with the first question, and this is open to everyone. I'd like to start from John. Why do you think initiatives that support underrepresented groups in tech are so important today? And I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts on this question before we move into more specific questions.
It's a great question, and it's something I've been speaking about quite a bit recently. I guess for context, I'm quite new to Sage. I've only been with Sage 6 months, so I'm understanding myself. What do we do in this space? What more could we do? And one of the things that I understand we're looking at the moment is understanding what our organisation looks like. What is our typical gender ratio? What is our ethnicity ratio in different countries? Where are the areas where we can get better, we can do more. And one of the things that I would say is we 42% of our organisation is female, and if you look at our board, about 33% of our leadership team are female. But one of the things we want to do is think about things like succession planning. So we want to get better at kind of looking at all the different levels in our organisation. And I firmly believe that you can only do that if you look at the talent you have coming in. So different organisations will have different ways they look at their what we call strategic workforce planning. And they'll often talk about having a pyramid shape in their organizations. You want more people coming in at the bottom. And actually, if you get that right and you use early careers as an opportunity to hire, really diverse talent, you will find that you will organically create those opportunities within your organization. Where I've seen it done really well is where there are some really intentional programs around how that's done. So using apprenticeships as a way to create opportunities for people, removing things that are kind of hard criteria that block people out. So in my previous role, we removed education grade requirements. We opened up the opportunity for people from different subject backgrounds to get into careers in tech. We created opportunities for them to learn more about us, get insights through the assessment stages, through the attraction phases, so that actually when they did apply, their application was stronger. But if you aren't intentional about it and you don't put these things in place and get the business to support you doing it, you're not going to get the results. And there's no point just having a hard target. You've got to kind of get everybody understanding why it's important to engage with these things, and that it's a collective responsibility. It's not one person or one team's responsibility. There's no point just having a diversity team. You need everybody to be a key part of driving this change.
Thank you so much, John. I think that was very profound. Thank you so much. So I'd like to hear your thoughts, Pamela, and then we'll move on to Sharon after that.
This is a great question. And I believe that my colleague has pretty much touched on every aspect of it. However, we can see from studies that it's even more important now to focus on diversity. It's even more important now to focus on young people in marginalized areas because they are full of potential. A lot of them have everything it takes. And just to draw back to this topic, I just came back to the United States from a trip to South Africa, where I met with students, from medical students to students in business, students in health and sciences, and they were some of the smartest young people that I have come across. Very intelligent, very focused, and only if, and I say only if they are equipped with the right education, the right tools that they can move forward, that they can propel into success. And as we know, AI is here to stay. Artificial intelligence, it's not going anywhere. And I say, as human beings, we need to start seeing artificial intelligence as the backstage crew, and human beings are on stage all the time because we have the human connection. However, we live in a world where our young people are bombarded with AI. They are bombarded with social disabilities. And by that, I mean our young people are hooked onto their phones. So they do not have the social dynamics that you and myself may have. So as the world evolves, we can see that there is a greater need every day for our young people to be equipped with AI knowledge, AI products, artificial intelligence skills, so that they can succeed in the future of work, especially our young people coming from marginalized areas who are not privy to everything that is available otherwise.
Thank you so much for that, Pamela. Thank you. I can see that you're really speaking the minds of the people in the chat, and that's pretty. Thank you. Sharon, over to you.
Yeah, success. Thank you so much. And I agree with Pamela and John. So they covered most of it. And with my experience with working with the local Techathon here in Sri Lanka, what I understood and witnessed is that here we talk about access, right? So then, giving them all the study materials and everything. Here the access, it's not all about the devices or the internet that we are talking about. I think mainly it's the exposure the guidance and the confidence that we give to the younger kids to believe that, okay, I deserve this opportunity. So if they feel like, okay, we are worth it, then they will go a longer distance than we ever expect them to be. So now, for example, if I talk about through my experience here in the local design sprint in Sri Lanka, so we took these opportunities beyond the urban areas. So when we took out this to, I don't really want to address them as rural areas, but beyond urban areas, what students told us was that they usually don't get access to programs like this, and most opportunities are centered around city areas. But the moment we reached out to them, the response was incredible. I mean, I still remember the very first meet and greet I had with the students and the parents. What I told them was, everyone is talented in their own way. Only difference is that some have more exposure, some don't, right? So now that we've brought the opportunity to your doorstep, just make sure that you grab it and just reap the best out of it. And like John mentioned, this responsibility is a shared responsibility. So us as leaders, we have to make sure that we bring out all these opportunities to every nook and corner, while students and parents, teachers, they also have the responsibility to grab it and just reap the best out of it and grow from it. Yeah, that's about it.
Thank you very much, Sharon, for sharing that. And that's the heart of what we do at Teens in AI. And it's why we try to reach, beyond our immediate second friends to get more people and bring everyone in, basically. And thank you so much for highlighting that experience, even in Sri Lanka. All right, so over to you, Blessing. Then after Blessing, Murawa, then we'll go to more specific questions in this conversation.
Okay, I think I'd like to take it from like a more selfish perspective. It's good to do good for the sake of doing good, but it's important that we understand that even with doing good, there's like benefits to you as well. And I'm talking about the kind of program I'm in now, and it's like a social data science program. And one thing you quickly understand is that social problems are systematic problems, they are wicked problems. And to properly craft a solution that speaks to it, you need the perspective of more people. So if you think about it like that, then inclusion starts to make sense, because I need you to actually design a good solution. I need your perspective of that problem to understand it enough to propose something that works. So for the sole purpose of just being better at your job, like it might make sense to draw on underrepresented groups, draw on women's viewpoints and things like that. And we've seen it again and again, where like the early photo cards, they were not properly calibrated because people there weren't like people that focused on aesthetic. They weren't women, if I'm going to label it that way, but it's some people's viewpoints were missing, and it showed in the quality of the solution that was, yeah.
Thank you very much. Unique perspective, but very much useful. That's exactly why we have a diverse panel. All right, so over to you, Muriwa, and then we'll move on.
Perfect. I think the rest of the panel have raised some very good points as a whole. And I think coming from as myself, anyway, I'm a young person myself, and I think it's very important leveraging young talent and young, like, innovative minds, very curious minds. Because even just when I was one of the ambassadors for, say, the recent Teens in AI London Techathon, I mean, the amount of ideas and the amount of potential that these young people had when they were pitching their ideas, it sounded absolutely unreal to me. And this is like on a much more, just imagine this on a much more global stage. I mean, Teens in AI is doing a massive, like really massive job in order to make this a global opportunity in different countries, different regions, to make sure that a lot of emerging technologists are really leveraging that opportunity and really getting that exposure that Sharon was talking about. And then you've got companies leveraging apprenticeships. I mean, you have young, innovative minds from, that are constantly thinking in school, thinking about how to apply their knowledge and how to apply their curiosity on a much more global stage in order to make impact. And, you see these young people go into companies and then they're making massive change. They're making a real difference. And just the perspective that they have in the way that they think is really important. So I think, like I said before, Teens and AI is doing a really good job to expose young people to this. And, it's really, really promising. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We'll take our flowers. Thank you very much. All right. So I think at this point, I'm going to be asking you, John, especially because of your current role. And I think that there's so many people that are also, curious in the chat today. So can you share with us strategies for expanding access to underrepresented groups and then the lessons that Sage has availed you? How do you scale opportunities and programs globally, seeing that you're the Global Early Careers Director at Sage?
Big questions there. Let me draw upon both my experience now, but also actually some of the experience that I've had previously, because I've come from Accenture, where I spent 14 years, and that is a very large global organization. And at Accenture, we had some very structured programs that we hired into, and we actually completely transformed the hiring we were doing in technology, but as I sort of mentioned earlier, in a very intentional way. So a lot of our focus was around, how can we hire the best quality but the most diverse talent? And some of the things that we did that had the biggest success was removing the kind of hard edge criteria that I mentioned earlier. So opening up those opportunities to more people. But also one of the things was being really careful that we didn't just repeat something that we'd always done. And in many organizations, that is a real challenge. It's like trying to think differently about how you might hire different talent pools. So, for example, we'd always hired into a tech program and we'd always said, oh, you have to have a STEM degree to do this particular program. But actually, one meeting we had, we said, well, why do you need to have a STEM degree? Because there are plenty of people that are very curious about technology and are in their own bedrooms doing coding and exploring different tools and things. So actually, what would happen if we opened it up to people who didn't have a STEM degree? And so we did that, and we created another pathway through that as well, where there was more exposure to kind of project management at first, so they could build their confidence, get to understand the business, and then we would give them experiences where they could learn different systems and tools and build the talent that way. And in that time, we went from having, I think it was about 10% of females on that program, and really not much in the way of diversity from an ethnicity perspective, to getting to 50% female and 40% of our program being from different ethnic minorities, which was just honestly one of the things I am most proud of in my career. I've now come to Sage, and what I'm doing at Sage now is completely transforming the way that we hire. So we're going to be hiring about 500 people a year globally. I was very lucky to spend some time in Johannesburg actually in October and met many of our graduates and interns there. And I have to agree with the comment earlier, the kind of attitude and gratitude and positivity in the room was just amazing. And they gave me the warmest welcome as well. So shout out to any of you in South Africa. But what I'm really learning is that, what is going to be important at Sage is having some really clear pathways into the organisation that look consistent globally. Because at the moment, we have someone who joins in South Africa who might have a very different experience to someone who joins in Barcelona, or in Spain, or in Portugal, or in the UK. So how can we create some consistent programmes where actually the individuals on that programme start building their global network with people on their own program, which is a really great place to start, right? So we're doing that. We're really thinking about increasing the number of apprenticeships that we offer, because I believe they are a really important way to create opportunity for people who maybe haven't done the typical route through schooling. And we're also really thinking about how we can improve and develop our development program internally so that we are making sure we are really setting people up for success. as well, because everybody comes in with a slightly different experience, with a slightly different perspective. So how can we really support people on that journey? So we're really formalizing that offering over the kind of 2 years. We're creating more kind of face-to-face opportunities to celebrate success, so milestone events to say, well done, you've graduated from the program now, or, you know, these kind of opportunities to get together. But the really key thing for me in all of that has been to listen to the customer as well. So we talk about listening to the customer from a product perspective. One of the things we've done across that journey is really taking the time to talk to our current early careers colleagues in the business and find out what's working, what's not working, how can we get better? And that's going to be really important to kind of making sure that as we scale the programs, that they are really successful. So the consistency, the structure, but thinking about it at a country level as well, because not everything works globally the same. So kind of how do you get through that complexity, but keeping the customer, in this case, our early careers colleagues, at the heart of the decisions that we make, and making sure we get that right.
Thank you. Wow, that's a lot. And I think that it's really exciting to see the amount of consideration that really goes into ensuring that we have that diversity. Really exciting, right? Thank you so much for sharing that. And I will now move on to Sharon, right? You're a senior data engineer, right? I'd like to ask that how can young people, especially women, access AI and tech education, and how can they leverage these skills to make a societal impact? So, what will be your advice to young women and also the underrepresented group in harnessing and making the most of AI and education for social impact?
Yes, so that's a great question, Success. So I strongly believe that data and technology, it goes hand in hand, and together it has more power to create such a meaningful impact in the society. And with that, it comes along with a lot of responsibility as well, right? Because now today we are building systems, and it's not just systems. So we are helping other people to make decisions upon the systems that we are building, and the communities, the livelihood. Sometimes it all depends on whatever the systems that we are building upon. So one thing that I always emphasize is that whoever who's willing to get into tech industry, or rather who's already in, even the kids that we are talking about, what I always say is that we have to ask this question: what problem are we really trying to solve here? Because if we are focused, or if you know what we are trying to resolve, then everything else will fall into place, so that our products or the services that we're trying to build, they are going to align with the social impact that we are trying to have. And one example I'll try to quickly share it with y'all is that, again, if I take the local design sprint here in Sri Lanka, our kids, the winning team, they basically started coming up with a solution of the real problem that they all faced. So now, for example, few months back, our country just faced a disastrous rainstorm, and these kids are from Kotmal area, and they saw firsthand what this rainstorm did to their community. They lost their loved ones, the properties were destroyed, but with that experience, what they did was they didn't just sit around. They got together and they thought, okay, we'll have to come up with a solution. And that's where the long journey starts from there. And also, it is a very powerful movement. And again, like I say, it comes with a huge responsibility. And, especially when we are dealing with these systems, and but most of the time we'll be dealing with different sorts of data, as in especially personal information, PII data, if I'm being very technical about it. So whoever who's trying to get into this industry always have to remember that it's not all about innovation. It's about solving right problems in the right way for the right people, and also keeping in mind these are not just numbers, and these are real people we are dealing with. So especially when it comes to, as I'm talking through my data engineering experience, whatever the PII data that we are dealing with, we have to be very thorough about how we are going to, extract them, how we are going to collect it, how we are going to store them, and how we are going to utilize in the systems that we are building. Because, anyone can build anything, right? With this AI, it's just a matter of putting out a prompt and building something, but it's not that. Human are involved in these systems. Sometimes people might be gain benefits out of it, or else it could be the other way around as well. So that keep that responsibility in mind, and the sky is the limit.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for that, Sharon, because with the ease at which you can build anything these days, there's a tendency to lose the reason why we're doing it. And thank you for bringing us back to center on that one. Pamela, now to you. You're a global speaker, and also from your global experiences, what are the key ways that emerging leaders can build confidence and inspire action in their communities? Okay, so you're not unmuted.
Thank you, Success.
Okay.
As I was saying, great question. The first way would be to reach out to our young people, find opportunities, visit the schools. I believe too often we leave the young people to solve their own problems. We're in a world where we constantly hear right now that our young people have absolutely no social skills. But as leaders, as emerging leaders, as aspiring leaders, what are we doing to help our young people with their social skills? Are we creating avenues to develop those skills? As I keep referring to my time back in South Africa because it was so notable, it is still on my mind. It is an experience I will never forget. Visiting students in those marginalized areas, they were thirsty for someone to say, you can do it. They were thirsty, they're hungry for people to believe in them. However, what's most important is helping our young people believe in themselves first and foremost. And how do we do that? By incorporating in our school curriculums initiatives and ways that our young people can believe in themselves. It could be just have a speaker or an ex-student come into the school and say, this is where I started and this is where I am. Helping our young people realize that where they started, where they are from, does not define where they go. It does not define where they end up. What defines where we as a human species end up is how we believe in ourselves. And as we know, self-confidence is very different from self-belief. Self-belief is having the ability to realize that you can do all things that you put your mind to. And self-confidence is knowing that you deserve those things that you have the ability to do. However, a lot of our people, especially our young people, they think that self-confidence comes before taking action. But if we teach our young people that you must first take action in order to increase your self-confidence, we will have a different world. Self-confidence comes from consistent repeat action and repeat behavior. When we repeat the very same thing every day, for example, if I am attending or going out to a party or heading to work, and I decide to dress up, and I do so for the next 30 days, by the end of the 30th day, my self-confidence would have skyrocketed. Why? When you dress up, you feel better about yourself. When you feel better about yourself, it increases your self-confidence. Suddenly, you have a boost in self-confidence and you feel you can handle the world. Now, that does not mean you will not face problems or challenges along the way. What it means is that because your level of self-confidence has increased, it puts you in a certain mental state that whatever challenges that comes your way, you're better prepared and better able mentally to deal with those challenges. The next point I want to discuss is attitude. I believe that too many leaders focus on skills, especially at the hiring process. And I believe I'm speaking to my colleague, John here, because as a hiring leader and one who's been at the executive level, I've managed 5-star boutique hotel across the globe. That's from North America to the Caribbean to Asia. And one thing I particularly look out for in our young people is attitude. Because our attitude can either make us or it can break us. When you have a young person being interviewed for a job, as hiring leaders, so say for example, a young person has applied for a position in communication. We're looking for communication skills. However, what's most important is attitude. How did this person greet me upon arrival? Does this person possess a positive energy? Because when you have such an attitude, you can learn a skill. Skills can be taught, but attitude cannot be bought. And when you have the right attitude, it changes everything. Not only your mindset, but it changes how people treat you. This is why you have the old adage cliche that says, people will treat you the way you want them to. Because how we show up in the world, and I do hope that all our young people are listening to this, how we show up in the world is how people are going to treat us. If you show up in a world where you're attending an interview, you're poorly dressed, one, your self-confidence is already down in the bottom. You head into the interview, you're not feeling the best about yourself because your confidence is low. This is the energy you're bringing into the room. The hiring manager will sense this and will realize, I am not sure if this is the right person for the job, even though you may have the right skill.
Thank you so much, Pamela. All right, so you said so many things, and I think that they're very, very salient points, to be honest. And when you spoke about the integrating these skills in their learning process right from the school, and I think this very well aligns with what we are doing at Teens in AI, is why we, look at integrating even this learning beyond the challenges into schools through our education platform. And that's something that we believe that every school administrator or proprietor should actually jump on, because you're not just building solutions, you're working with teams, you're communicating, you're pitching, you're learning how to sell the idea that you've actually thought about. And I think that that's really brilliant. But before I move on to Blessing and then also to Mira, I'd like to ask Joanne one question and then I'll move to Mora for a bit. And it's off the response that you had given earlier, where you spoke about standardization across the world, across the globe, because, oh, well, you have oversight, not just within a central region, but across the world. Um, what how do you manage standardization in a way that it also takes into consideration specialties or specific requirements or what's obtainable in the different regions or spaces? So how do you maintain standardization in terms of experience, quality, and processes, while also taking into consideration that one standard might not necessarily be fair for a certain region based on their exposure and also experience?
Yeah, it's a great question. So It's not easy. First of all, it's really complicated. And I know that because I'm right in the thick of it at the moment, thinking about our kind of, the works councils in Europe and kind of making sure we get the relevant approvals for what we want to do there. I think it's fair to say that my personal opinion is that I struggle a little bit with competency interviews, competency questions being the sorts of questions that say, tell me about a time, or, describe a situation in which you've done this. Because my feeling is that what happens with those questions is, first of all, I think people often come with a script in mind. They often have kind of rehearsed what they might want to say. And what I really want to hear is the kind of authentic voice. I want, I don't want people to feel like they've just got to reel off a script. But I also think those sorts of questions lend themselves to favouring people who have been lucky enough to get certain opportunities. And I've seen it myself because I've conducted thousands upon thousands of interviews over the years, and you can see that candidates who've been lucky enough to get an internship through a contact, or we have a thing in the UK called the Duke of Edinburgh, which is a sort of experience that people do in school where they get to try different extracurricular things. It gives you different experiences that you can then talk about. But what about if you're somebody who doesn't have an influencer who's enabled an opportunity for you? What about if you're somebody that has to be a carer for somebody that you love, and so you haven't had the opportunity to get different jobs outside of your studies? And so for me, when I was at Accenture, one of the things we did was we wanted to move away from those sort of competency interviews and instead move towards what I call strengths-based interviews. And this talks a little bit to your point, Pamela, which is, how can we level the playing field and give people an opportunity to try something in an assessment process to show what their potential might be, rather than asking them to draw upon a past experience? We completely transformed our assessments with that in mind. And lo and behold, we saw that the diversity of the talent that we brought in increased. But actually, the quality was really, really good. Better in some cases for some programs than it had been when we used to run the competency process. Now, there are many people that do competency interviews, and I think, in certain areas they make sense. And so I'm not completely slating them. I'm just saying that if you're running early careers programs, I think you need to be really thoughtful about all the elements of your assessment process, and that you're really giving the candidates the best opportunity to do their best in that process. And part of it as well for me is around some consistency around what the communication with the candidates is like. So that's another thing we're doing at the moment, is saying, what are we telling candidates before they come to the interview? What tips are we giving them to help them prepare? Because again, they're not always going to have somebody who can tell them this stuff. So how are we going to do that? Even once they've accepted an offer to join with us, what does the communication with them look like? How are we preparing them for their first day? How are we helping to build their confidence and make them feel less anxious about their first day? What links or information can we send them that might help them understand better what to expect when they join? So I think that's the first thing, and that's one of the things that I'm going to be looking at Sage, is kind of, what is the best process? The reason consistency is important is because for me, as a global early careers director with 10 different countries that I'm hiring into, if every single country is running a completely different process with completely different ways of assessing, it's very hard for me to be confident that we have a gold standard that we're trying to achieve across all of that. But what we will do is have also make sure that we have fairness around the way we assess candidates. So we use what's called a scoring matrix when candidates go through a process. Every single interviewer has to write down scoring. It has to have robust feedback. They have to be able to explain the justification, the reason for their decision. And that's really important. Because if it's just a yes or a no and someone just decides and it's an individual choice, that's where I think unconscious bias can creep in. And suddenly you can end up in a hiring situation where everybody just knows someone and they just brought them in that way. And that's not fair, right? And I think we all agree that fairness is one of the most important things in a process. Everybody wants to feel like they've had a fair shot at that role and that the best and most worthy candidates have got it. That's probably a very long answer, but hopefully helps.
And success, before we
Yeah.
move on, if I may piggyback on what John said, one of the reasons my company focuses on training and my niche market is really our young people, because we ought to realize that our young people are the future leaders of tomorrow.
Indeed.
And if I may share a personal experience, I remember many years ago, I'm not going to say how many years ago because people might start judging my age. However, my first job, I was straight out of high school, went to look for a job. In search of a job, met with the hiring manager who said, I can't hire you. You have absolutely no experience. I went on to say, but ma'am, if you do not hire me, how will I gain the experiences that I need for the world of work? And that is where I felt there is a need to fill in that gap where I meet our young people between that time where they're about to finish school and head into the world of work, because they have the qualifications. Some of them have the right, even the right attitude, but because they may not have the experience in terms of soft skills, they are at a disadvantage, because not every organization will hire based on the way Sage hires. And we're looking at a global perspective. That is why I believe, and to go back to my second question, and even the very first one, that is why I strongly believe there is a wide gap and a need for schools to come together with organizations like Teens in AI and to strategize and see where the need is and to meet our young people in the middle, to be able to bridge that gap and provide what is needed, which is the soft skills. And that is where my company comes in.
Thank you so much, Pamela. And that, funny enough, that leads into the question I'd like to ask Muriwa, specifically because Muriwa is an aspiring cybersecurity professional and currently in an IT specialist. And I know that you've been doing quite a lot of personal growth, taking on initiative, having your resilience at play, shaping your career because you have that thought as to what you are striving towards. So I'd like to ask you, what role has that played in bringing you here today? And how exactly can the youth contribute to their community through mentorship, through outreaches and all of that? So I'd like to hear from your experience, Muriwa, and that could inspire someone today.
I think that's a really good question, and I'd like to look back because I just finished school not too long ago, about in July 2025. And, looking about this time last year, I'd, working towards my A-levels, I was hopeful to go to university. And then for some reason, I couldn't go to university due to some complications. And then I was going through apprenticeship applications. Nothing was going through. I wasn't getting any assessment centers, no interviews, no offers. And it was looking like a really dark place. And, you really need to be able to have that mindset shift that now you have to be very resilient. I need to take opportunities as they come. So you need to take it one step at a time. So my next goal was to make sure I aced my A-levels. I did that. Then you move on and you see, okay, how can I give myself that advantage now? Because I'm out of school for a whole year. What can I do to better my chances next year? So you take those opportunities by potentially doing certifications, looking for online experience, trying to get a job, trying to get that experience that companies are 100% looking for, because 100% companies will always look for experience. And if you're able to give yourself that sort of advantage or that leverage that you can use and then apply in different interviews, you're taking opportunities as they come and just improving yourself as a whole, not only as a professional in your relative field, but as personally, because you're gaining a lot of soft skills as well as hard skills you can apply into a workplace. And I think as a whole, linking back to this Teens in AI program, I thought when I first came across this program, it jumped straight at me because it gave me the opportunities to give young people who potentially could be in my sort of situation or potentially a couple of years younger than I am, the opportunity to have that experience. and to really host something and give them the opportunities to put on their CV, to speak about in interviews, just to have that exposure and then speak to people who are experienced in their aspiring field or people who are navigating that whole growth and learning stuff, for example, like I am now. And, it's very important to take those as they come because they're not that frequent. But if you do have that, you give yourself a push and you're able to build straight off of that. So yeah, I'd say that's my kind of way of going up. And I'm constantly improving now. And I say this year that I've had and the opportunity I've had to work at Rico, gain my experience whilst doing stuff outside in order to give back, provide value and be able to tailor my experiences and give advice to people in similar situations has been really helpful. And I think I'd just love to continue to push on that projection and continue to go from there. So yeah, hopefully I've answered the question.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Muriwa. And that's very spot on, to be honest, because the kind of experience you get being a local ambassador in Tanzania, I'm sure Sharon can attest to that. You're not just um, doing an event. No, you're gaining project management experience. You're also understanding the entire process of product creation, how to analyze a problem, how to walk through that, the ethical side of it. There's a whole lot of learning experience that goes into it. And there's no way you can walk teams through that without you learning it yourself. So it's actually pretty awesome. Thank you so much, Muriwa, for that. Now I'll go to Blessing, especially because Blessing attended this program in 2020, just like most of us in this chat today. And then now she is a data scientist. I always call her my data guru, right? So she's the data guru, and then she's currently a student at, London um, LSE, right? So right now, what I want to get from your experience or from your thought process is, can you walk us through your journey, right? From where you were at 2020, briefly, like in a space of 90 seconds, right? Where you were at 2020 till now, because so many people are where you were at that time. So, and now where you are now is really admirable to see how you've actually been able to grow and push into the professional space. Could you walk us through that journey and the role that the emerging technologies actually played in your journey?
Yeah, thank you, Success. I think that's a very important question. And Pamela mentioned it when she was saying that you need to be able to see yourself in someone else's story. And I think like when I was starting out as 2020, I was totally new to the field. It was lockdown period, so I was out of school. And I saw the advert, someone actually sent it to me and was like, do you want to change the world with technology? And I was like, yes, I want to change the world with technology. So I just applied, really. I zero interest, zero knowledge. But when I applied, I saw that there was a program, the Teens in AI program is very dynamic. So there are a lot of things that are packed together to kind of give you the whole experience. And for me, it was the design thinking workshops that for me was like the thing that stuck with me. We had like two design thinking mentors. One was in Quantum Black. I still remember their names because it made such a strong impression on me. And it was basically talking you through how you should solve problems that people need. And the whole point of design thinking is trying to understand the customer's pain points before actually jumping and launching out to a solution. And for me, it stuck with me because when I came there, I had an idea of the type of problem I wanted to solve. And through the process of gathering, doing interviews, looking at the data, seeing what exactly are people's problems, I kind of started to say, maybe my idea is not that important now. Maybe it's not as pressing as I thought it was. And it was just like the way data helped me to change my mind. I just needed to do that for a lot of people. Like, really consider the facts, present it to them in a way that is compelling enough for them to see the truth, or make a solution that actually speaks to their pain points, that they actually acknowledge it. So for me, I just knew this was interesting. And it was a case of interest for me. I optimized for interest, which I think I should change now. But I optimize for interest, and I encourage people to optimize for interest because when you optimize for interests, you put your best foot forward and you do greater work than someone that is optimizing for something else. So I was at that place, very wide-eyed, very curious. I needed to know as much as I could. So I took several late nights just trying to understand what's in the data space, where I could do. And mind you, when COVID ended, I had to go back to school and face my electrical engineering degree. So I completed that with a good result. But right off that, I knew I wanted to pursue like this thoroughly. So I reached out to people and like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm interested in. And fortunately, someone replied, gave me my first job in data. It was in a data center. And once I got there, I started to see what was the main pain points that I could solve. It was the same thing with the design thinking workshop. I started to see what was the main pain point that I could solve. And with the data space, you see that with data skills, you can solve a large number of, like, a lot of problems. With automation, Python skills, either with the visualization skills, machine learning, like there's a lot of things you can do. And like when I went there, I started to understand what was the pain points with the data team in the data center. And one of the things was the reporting process. Anyone that's doing reports for like a large number of clients knows that is very strenuous, is very manual, and it can just be very drudgerous. So I just tried to figure out how we could automate the process. And we were a team of 4. We had to create like 100 PowerPoint reports every month for the clients. So luckily I had brushed up my Python skills. I had brushed up my Excel skills and everything. So I could design a program that could automate that process for them. And that was like the first experience that, okay, I could talk about when I was in a job interview. And from there, I used that experience to get another job as a data scientist. And that job was with AI agents. And I obviously didn't know as much as I needed to get the job, but I knew enough to get my foot into the door and to learn and to improve. And it was the same thing. I optimized, really did good work there, tried my best there. And when I was there working with like deep tech, I noticed that maybe I'm more interested in the social side of things. I wanted to pick up skills from the social side of things. And I started to look for programs that would give me not only the technical skills, but also like the people skills, the research skills, because when you're fully deep into the technical things, you kind of start to lose touch on how this affects like a human that is using the product. And I just knew that I needed that. So it was like, I needed to find the programs. I needed to find how I could get there. And since I optimized for interest, I always had like energy to pursue what I wanted. So that's how I applied for several programs in the UK. And luckily enough, LSE took me in. And it's like, it's been such an amazing 1 year, because with the program year, you have people from the social sciences actually teaching you data. So it goes back to the first point I said on seeing things from people's viewpoints, not just like your technical mind, like now seeing it from a political scientist viewpoint, an anthropologist viewpoint, you get to form a better picture. And if you're on the call, you're just write out, just pick the thing that interests you the most and throw yourself at it. It's like work as hard as you can at it, and something will come up. Reach out to people. People probably would answer. And luckily enough, I've had like women help me up. Like Elena was the first person to give me a choice. The next person was Nosy. She gave me the opportunity with the data center. And the next job, I interviewed with a man, but I've had support for women. So I mean, the life meets you at where your energy and your interest intersect. So I think, yeah, just pursue that.
Thank you so
Success,
much.
if I may just add on what Blessing said,
Yeah.
it should be a whole day webinar. But she made a very valid point. And for the teens and the young people watching us today, if there's one thing I would love for them to take from all of this, based on what Blessing has said, which is very instrumental for young people's growth, is always be hungry to learn. Always be hungry for knowledge. Now, we've heard many times that knowledge is power, but what is even more powerful is applied knowledge. When this one person reached out to Blessing. She did not say no. She said yes, as much as she did not even have any idea in terms of what she was going to do. But you can tell she was a young person who was hungry for more. She was hungry for information. She was hungry to learn. And I want to share with our young people listening to us today, be a lifelong learner, because as a lifelong learner, doors will open up for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pamela. And thank you so much, Blessing. That was a very solid one. And I like the fact that you're able to really emphasize even a point that Sharon had mentioned earlier regarding seeing data beyond numbers and their actual people. And that is pretty important. I guess there's so much to ask. There's so much to discuss. We typically have a very short time. And then I'll have to wrap this up at the moment. If you have any questions from the audience, please drop that in the Q&A. We'll take a couple of questions. I have a number here that I am also going to be asking. One specifically asked, and I think this was from the conversation from John. This person says that I am 16 at the moment, and then I'm finishing off from secondary school. Are there programs, early career programs that are done by SAGE that is targeted at school leavers? That's not university leavers now, but the middle level school, secondary school leavers, and not just the university school leavers. If yes, please would you share?
So we're just looking at this at the moment, actually. We're a bit later in the cycle than we would have liked to have been, but hopefully from next year onwards, we're going to start to be putting our roles out a little bit earlier. But one of the areas that we have typically hired apprentices to in the past and would be open to school leavers is in our customer service area. So we have some of those roles live in Newcastle at the moment, but we are looking at what else we might be opening up. So keep an eye on the Sage Careers website, because in the next couple of months, we're going to be putting lots more roles live. And hopefully there might be an opportunity that aligns there.
If I could just hop onto that point as well,
Yeah.
I think it's very important to, a lot of people talk about level 6 apprenticeships, like degree apprentices, but I say it's very important to have a look at level 3 and level 4s as well, because
A great shout. Yeah.
they take on people that are just leaving secondary school, so 16-year-olds, and
Yeah.
they're very as important, particularly in emerging sectors like tech as well. Like you get that experience, so you're able to build. Imagine building from 16. And just, on that trajectory with a company that's supporting you from your youth. So 100% look at opportunities like that as well.
Thank you so much for that, John, and thank you so much for that, Muriwa. I'm sure that we are all excited because there's so much information, so much knowledge, and so much direction that we're getting from the panelists today, and I'm really excited. And we have one final question because we are running out of time. And the one question would go to Sharon, and that's off the back of what you had mentioned earlier, which when you said that the data for you has to be more than just the numbers, but people. The question here says that what do you do if you are in a core technical space and you don't have the opportunity to mix with the social? What do you do to keep yourself centered, to not seeing data as just numbers? What practical things do you do?
If I understood the question right, Success, as in what would you have to do to understand data beyond just numbers, right?
Yes. So you had mentioned earlier, I'm trying to understand. Yeah, you've mentioned earlier that for you, it's important to see data as not just numbers, but as actual people. And this person is saying, if you see data that often or numbers that often, you tend to drift into just focus on technical and just do that. So what do you do to keep yourself centered, to remember each time that these are human beings and people that you're actually working around?
Yes, that's a really great question, and I was waiting for a question like that. So that happens. I mean, that's normal for you to, if you really work day to day with numbers, sometimes you might take away that human factor from yourself. But like I said in earlier conversation also, always keep in mind that what you are trying to resolve here, what sort of a solution, what sort of a problem that you are trying to resolve. And if you keep that in mind, then the personas will come into play. And then you'll always feel like that's where this AI ethics in building also play a huge role. Always, if you keep yourself grounded to see, okay, this system is not just a random system that I'm trying to build with all the sophisticated technology and all. No, it's not that. Always keep that in mind. What made you to at least come up with a solution, because it always include people there, right? And one other thing is, I always believe that humanity, kindness, love, it tops everything. Technology, it comes second, right? If we as engineers, this is my only message, if you have to take anything at all, just take this out. We as engineers, creators, innovators, always remember whatever the thing that we build, whatever the product or service that we are putting out to the society, it always have to serve the humanity. Leave this humanity aside. It has to serve living beings on the planet Earth, and technology can never harm anyone at all. And if you have few more seconds, Success, I'll just wrap it up quickly. I think at some point in life, we all may have gone through bullying, right? It could be in person, online. I mean, even I have gone through it, not just once or twice, but for many years, I've been through it. But just wanted to tell you that some of the bad things that happen to you does not define who you are, and you're much better than that, right? You can come up with the negativity. If I could do that, everyone else can do that. So never back down with whatever the negativity that I mean, throw at you. You're much better than that. Always remember, technology is here to serve the humanity, not go against it. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited that we're wrapping up with that. I think that's a very, very amazing one. Thank you so much, Sharon. I must say thank you. We have so much more to talk about, but we've run out of time. And I know that everyone is itching to get the announcement for the top 5 teams that will be moving to the final. So I'll say big thank you, Joan. Thank you so much, Sharon. Thank you, Pamela, Blessing, and Murewa. So now we've come to that moment where we are going to be announcing the top 5 teams that will be moving on to the Global Demo Day. Now I'm going to be filling us in. We started this journey right from January. So we've had these teams working, very hard on their projects. Some of them started off in February. They've had to refine their project. We started off with 241 projects built, right? And that they were submitted. And then, that went down to 26 of them moving on to the semifinals. And then we had virtual judges from across the world, independent judges scoring and vetting their projects. Every project got viewed and scored by at least 7 judges per project. So you can be sure that there was zero bias. And then we had to ensure that every single person got scored without the bias or the sentiments of any other person or from the team members at Teams in AI. And now that we have all of this, we're now going to be announcing the top 5 teams that will be moving on to the finals. If you are not in this team, just know that you have actually done amazing. And if you're here, please ensure you celebrate everybody and every team that has worked so hard to be here. So now we're going to be moving on to the first team in no particular order. The first team that will be moving on to the finals, and then you get to defend your project live in front of global judges. All right, so let's go. The first team is all the way from Islamabad, Pakistan. We have Team Nova. That's the team with the project Seedling. They will be moving on to the finals and will be defending their project in the finals. Congratulations to the team. Congratulations. The second team that will be moving on to the finals is no other team but Colombo, Sri Lanka. So we have the team Build X AI, and then their project Build X AI will be moving up to the finals, and they get to defend their project in front of the global judges. I am so excited. I can see all the love. I can see all the energy in the chat, and we love to see that. So now moving on to the third team that will be going to the finals. Fingers crossed. I can feel the hearts of people palpitating. We have Houston, USA, Team Eat Well. Eat Well will be moving to the finals. I know they are not currently on the call because of time difference, but we have Team Houston, USA moving up to the finals. Now to the fourth team that will be moving to the finals. We have the Sohoyando, South Africa. We have Team AI Tech Squad. I see Pamela screaming. And then they have the Project Medi AI Assist, an amazing project. And they will be moving on to the finals. And now to the final team, the fifth team moving on to the finals. Whoosh, fingers crossed. We have Ukraine, Team Ukraine team, How AI with their project IRA Learning. And trust me, the teams have worked so hard to get here. So these are the 5 teams that will be moving on to the finals. We have the team How AI, Team Eat Well, the AI Tech Squad. We have the team Build X AI and the team Nova. Well done, well done, well done to the local ambassadors and to the teams. And then to everyone on the call, you get the opportunity to join in on the demo day. You can actually join in to watch the teams present their projects, defend their projects, and also get them, the judges' comments, and we announce the winner at the global demo days. All you have to do is scan the barcode on the screen to join in and register for the event. Events happening live on the 23rd April, and all the teams will get to speak to their project live and defend it right here within the virtual space. This has been an amazing hour. I'd like to say a big thank you to every single person for joining in again. We'll leave the barcode up for a little bit just so that we could all scan in. We'll also share the links out to everyone so you could join in for the Global Demo Day. A big congratulations to every team that has joined in, and a big thank you to all the panelists for this session today. It's been an amazing hour, and I say thank you so much for the engagements in the chat, for the many emojis, the loves, the celebration, and also to the panelists. Thank you so much for sharing. And then at this time, we'll have to wrap up the event. If you've not been able to scan the barcode, no worries. You're going to get the link also right after this, just so you can join in and watch these amazing projects that these teams have worked on and have built within the process of this campaign. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye.